Hi there YouTube, it's me Morrison America, and in this video we'll be talking about SAF, aka Special Augment Factor, Special Ability Factor. I'm playing on the Japanese PSO2, but this video will break it down for you even if you're playing on the global PSO2. If you want to look in the description for the time skip, go ahead. There's going to be various things that you would want to know about SAF. Even though I gave the definition of SAF, there's a lot of things you would want to know. However, if you're looking for a very specific ability in terms of SAF for weapons and units, you might want to use the Arks Visiphone. If you don't see it there and you want to ask around, you can. There is a Discord fleet as well. But here's the thing about SAF. These are built in and they are good because they are always at 100%. Granted that you follow some basic rules, which I will highlight later in this video, especially when we go to Monica and Dudu. Here's the thing about SAFs. They are found on new types. Now, for units, there's no such thing as an old type unit, new type unit. But for weapons, there is a difference. There's old types and new types. Almost all new types will have an SAF built into it. Even this 3-star weapon over here, if I look at it, if I click on it, go to the 5th option, which is Special Ability Factor Confirmation, you can see that it's going to have an SAF. This is very important. Memorize or recognize this blue icon. You will want to see that, especially once again when you dabble with Monica and Dudu and you toy around with something that's at plus 35. That is its condition though. You do need to get the weapon to plus 35 to even see this option to see the SAF. This SAF is pretty much a body 3. It's going to give 100% success is a transfer rate. And then for the specific stat it's enhancing, it is S defense plus 30, and you can see it on the modifier. When you hit mid, late, end game, or you got the right equipment, especially for weapons, you would try to get higher grade weapons, especially in the 13-star, 14-star, 15-star rarity, because they will have certain SAFs that might appeal to you, and they will be a lot better compared to something that is at a lower rarity. No offense to this Vita Sword NT with the body 3. There's something else that might catch your interest, and it would be a lot better to go for that. For example, if I look at this 15-star and look at its SAF, it's going to give Superior 6, which is plus 7 PP. Or if I look at this particular 14-star that I have in my inventory and I click on it, it will give me a power 6 at 100% and increase my S attack by plus 45. Now, there's a couple other things I do want to emphasize on in terms of SAFs, but before we go any further with the actual process and reading it, I want to emphasize on the units. Now, for weapons, once again, there's old types and new types, and most new types will have a built-in SAF as long as you meet said requirement. You do have to get it to plus 35. Now, for units, there's no difference from an old type and new type. They're pretty much using the old type grind system, which I will make in a separate video, emphasizing on the process and all that, and why old type grinding for weapons was a pain in the butt. However, certain units, specifically 13-star units, will have an SAF. This is a new mechanic that they added in terms of episode 6 content. And if I look at something like a Liberate, for example, and it is at plus 10, if I stare at the SAF for it, it is a power 6 at 100% that gets plus 45 S. The condition is it has to be at plus 10. When it comes to grinding, you do need to know the different tiers and you need to understand about max rarity, which I'll explain it slightly in a bit. I did make a separate video for that. You can look in the upper right corner or in the description. So when it comes to units, you would want to try to push it to plus 10 so you can get that SAF. Now, for units, or well, specifically weapons, my bad, not units, weapons. Weapons, they have to get to plus 35 to get that SAF. And you can see it once again when you go to this little page here, it says it has to be at plus 35. Now, there's another little rule that you do need to be aware of, which I will point out when I go to Monica and Dudu. So, you need this to be at plus 35. And once again, if you haven't seen the video talk about grind rarity stuff, above my head or in the description. Pretty much you need to feed multiple dupes or you need to feed grind caps to it of a particular weapon type or the overall grind caps to get it from 30 to 35. Now we are talking to Monica and Dudu. We are getting into the fix process, and I'm going to show you guys how you can figure out if you have the SAF and some other things as well. So when I talk to Dudu, I was going to say Monica, but no, it's Dudu. When I talk to Dudu for the first demonstration, I'm going to emphasize on why it's important to get that plus 35, because it's not going to show if you don't have it. For the Nox weapon, if I go to it in my inventory and click on the fourth option, it does have an SAF of a grade 4, but once again, the conditional is it has to be at plus 35. So if I go over here and do an add ability and go to this 10 star that's at a 0 slot, I'm going to click on this, and you can see that when I try to fix this, there's no blue icon, there's no power 4 in its option. Now, if I decide to use the same base weapon, which is at 10 star, and go for the dim sword instead, let me deselect that Nox, select the dim sword, it is at plus 35. So when I do this, you will see that power 6 is an option. In a dim weapon series, depending on what weapon type it is, specifically I'm using the melee attack one with the orange background, it will give you a grade 6. Specifically power 6 at 100%. This is going to give you a whopping plus 45 in S attack. And you can tell this is an SAF by that blue icon. Now, I can do this and you can see that it's transferring at 100%. Now, this is a bit of a lie. Why? Because when you, well, it's not a huge lie, because when it comes to you getting from a 0 slot to a 1 slot, there is no huge upslot penalty. Because of my previous example, it doesn't display the actual minus penalty, especially when you upslot. So we're going to go to the extreme. Let's say you want to try to push this to an 8 slot, and I decide to use a dim sword, especially the one that's at plus 35. When I do this, you can see that I can select all these abilities. SSAs are going to be handy when it comes to you pushing to an upslot, or you pushing to a higher slot. I will have a separate video emphasizing on that. But the moment I try to make an extra slot, especially if this was originally at a 7 slot, this is when you start to upslot. And as you can see, that 100% becomes a 30%. There's a negative 70 kicking in. Obviously, you can increase this with ability success boosters, natural boosters, or with a boost week, or use a lot of things to try to push it even further. But it is a whopping 30 just with one piece. Now, you can use this to your advantage if you were trying to upslot. Pretty much that's how you can tell. Now, here's the thing. Do you need to have this SAF on the particular piece? No. But if I now try to do an affix, again with that 0 slot, and if I want to try to get that power 6, you can see that when I select it, obviously it does have that power 1. But it does have that SAF popping up as well. So I can just select that and get it to 100%. Now, here's the reason to why you want to finalize something and actually put something on this roster over here. You want to put it on the physical weapon in our unit. When it comes to SAF, and it's better for me to demonstrate this on PSO2 Affix Simulator, so I'm going to bring that up while I talk about it. When it comes to SAF, they will not register as a normal ability because it is an SAF. So if I go over here, obviously you guys should be familiar with the profound weapons, so it's particular 13 star. And I think I have one in my storage. The reason to why you would want to finalize that is because that has, well, if you don't know what it has, at plus 35, it will give you a Reverie Catalyst. Reverie Catalyst is normally, if you try to make it, it's going to be a pain in the butt and you had to gamble at a 10%. The only way to try to get it to work without having to do SAFs, or the normal way, is to use a receptor to try to move it as well. But you will need to try to, well, the plus 35 of that profound 13 star weapon is the Reverie Catalyst, and it can be an SAF. Now the problem is, if I do this for all of my fodder pieces, and then I have Omega Memoria somewhere to try to make this what is it? Mana Reverie, you don't see that option. This is important because guess what? You have to make it as it is. So you now see there's an option for Reverie Catalyst because I'm making this a finalized actual ability. And the moment I decide to get rid of all those SAFs and I have Omega Memoria, I have the option to make Mana Rev. So in game, you would want to have that Omega, or the, what is it, Reverie Catalyst on your profound weapon. As you can see, I don't have an 8 slot one, but for this one, I might as well demonstrate it. So for it to register, I would want to do this. And with the lack of meseta, I'm gonna have to get a bit more meseta. So if I wanted to, I would select this. I would select those two certain pieces. I don't remember which one it was now. Great, there's a bunch of these damn things. What is it? Exceed, and the other one should have an exceed as well, which is this one. So if I decide to use these two, and then you can see that there's the SAF for it. But I do want to place it onto this actual roster. So I'm going to do that, this. It's a bunch of junk abilities, pretty much. Slight problem because I don't have... As you can see now, Verbally Catalyst is not an SAF. You can still have the SAF because you have the weapon and the rarity of plus 35. But in terms of it being on the piece, you want this to be a thing so it can give you this mana rev. If you don't do this and you leave it as it is and it's only available through your list of eligible abilities and it's not even on the weapon, it's gonna be a problem. You need to actually finalize this, and I did demonstrate it in one of my video. Well, it's in my light weaver, my second light weaver weapon that I made. When I finalize those augments and affixes, you see me do that process. So if you want to check that out, look in the description or look above my head. Look above my head for that video. So let us go back to this, and let's say I want to try to get the power 6 onto a bow. Now, I would say don't do this in a sense. This is just for demonstration purposes. But the thing is, once I try to do something like this, and if I want to finalize it, let's say I want to get all these abilities and then get all these things down here, then I want to try to finalize it. The moment I finalize this power 6 will not become an SAF anymore. It becomes a regular ability. Why? Because you're getting rid of the sword. You are destroying this sword in the process of you getting that final thing. So if you plan to do a final fix with an SAF, make sure it counts, and this is what you want. You have to be conscious of that. Not only that, the big thing is, if you work with something, especially if it has a certain SAF, you want that to be at the same number of whatever you're working with. For example, let's say I want to try to work with this, profound weapon, and it's at a 6 slot, and I want to work with something that is at a 7 slot. Obviously, it won't work because basic rule is it has to be at the same slot or higher. So that means I have to get this to a 7 slot. How? I don't know. Depends on what sort of approach you want to do. Junk abilities to try to push it. Maybe you want some other abilities because you have something else in mind as well. Do what you need to do, but you need this at a 7 slot. And the last snippet that I want to talk about in terms of SAFs is that you can use multiple one of these. So if I wanted to work with the 0 slot, for example, and I have multiple weapons at plus 35, I can select these. When I select these, you will see that it will allow me to select the SAF for it. And if I go with this, you can see that I can select all of these SAFs. So that dumbs down how you can go about weapon augment farming, and also how you can dumb down the final fixes that you can do for your weapons. Because of SAFs, it gives you an easy time to manipulate a lot of things. There are some things you still need to note, like once again, the slot numbers and what ability you are going for, and if you need to finalize it and all that. But this is why SAFs are so good on weapons now. Units is a bit tricky. It is a thing, especially if it's in the lower numbers, but if you try to do it at the 8 slots, it's going to be a pain in the ass because of the fact that it's at an 8 slot, and when it comes to trying to push to an 8 slot, it's not easy. It's not easy. There's going to be a lot of RNG, and you got to pray to the RNG gods that it works. But for weapons, it's not as bad, especially if you use SSAs alongside if you making some of these push and advances. But that is it for this video in terms of SAFs. If you have any question, comment, concerns, put it down below. I covered a good chunk of it. If I missed something, I might add onto it, maybe in a separate video that would be attached to this one. But thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.